Ahoy and welcome. I am Lee the Pirate Tester, and today I'd like to talk to you about a testing conference I was at this week, June 2023. It was an event called Leeds Atelier X, the number 10. It's a free conference, so the tickets for it go super fast, and this was my first time going, so I'd love to share with you the talks and workshops that I saw and just the overall vibe for the event. The big thing I will say before getting started is I really enjoyed the event, a mixture of both the talks that went on, but also just a chance to catch up with people. It's my first conference going to since the pandemic. So some of these people I've not seen in 3+ years, some people I've not seen for 5, 6 years, maybe from conferences even longer ago. So it was just nice as a way just to catch up with people and also just meet some people that I knew from being online with or even worked with in the past, but I never got the chance to connect with in person. So I will start by going over the talks and workshops that I experienced over the course of the day. The first talk that I went to was from Claire Reckless, and it was QA to EM, why testers can make great engineering managers. So Claire talks about her career experience, how she got into testing, the different things she did, and then the circumstances that got to her getting the opportunity to move from being in test to an engineering manager. She talked about the benefits that testers can bring to being an engineering manager, as well as the struggles that testers can have, how often our career paths don't feel as fully developed compared to, say, those in development or more supporting areas. Whilst I'm not interested in becoming an engineering manager myself, a lot of the things that Claire talked about resonated with me in terms of wanting to help people, how it can feel that management can sometimes be where you go if you're not considered technical enough, and she was concerned that doing that might acknowledge that she's losing her technical abilities or that it's the best place for her, when actually she was thinking about what she enjoyed in her role, and it was helping people, helping them learn, helping guide them, mentor them, helping them develop, and a lot of that actually suited where she wanted to be. I came out of that with 2 pages of notes by the end of it. The key lessons that Claire took from this is one, identify your support network, whether it's fellow managers, an engineering manager collective, external community, but also from other teams. Two, you can't do it all. Overcommitting and taking on too much, doing management qualification, and just realizing she couldn't do everything. She knew that she had to accept, stop trying to do so much and focus on the important things. Three, that she doesn't have all the answers, and she's not there to teach the team to be better, but to help facilitate them to be better. She's recently moved into looking after their platform team, which is something that she's not done in several years now. And what she didn't know will be quite out of date, but that doesn't stop how she can support them as a manager, as again, facilitating their learning. And four, feedback is key. Finding out from them how is she doing, get as well as feedback from other teams of how they're interacting with the team she's managing. So it was just a lot of good ideas, and not just what are the people doing, but how are they interacting with others, how are the team being perceived. The second talk of the morning was by Lucy Llewellyn, good old Welsh names. Back to basic, fundamentals of software engineering, and things that people assume. So she went on to explain a lot of the jargon that she encountered, where she didn't necessarily know what people meant, but soon she realised the terminology they were using, she was like, oh, they mean this, and so forth. So she wanted to help demystify things and just cut through the jargon for us. It started very simplistic for me. She was talking about computers and what RAM is and what bits and bytes are and so forth. I was like, yeah, cool, this is great. And then it skyrocketed. So she talked about object orientated programming. She talked about paradigm. She talked about styles and ways of programming, whether it's imperative or declarative, and just so many things where I went very quickly from, yeah, this will be fine, maybe I should have been to the other talk, or, oh, there's a lot of things in it I've heard referenced from developers I've worked with, but not fully clear what it is they mean. And it really helped me come out of getting a better idea of things. Again, I came out with 2 pages of notes. I don't know how much I might use that information. It'll depend on teams I work with going ahead, whether they use a lot of terminology I don't know, as well as just be like, hey, what do you mean by this? I don't have a computer science degree. I don't have years of development experience. What is it you mean by X? So, what is it you mean by an object or a class, and clarifying things like that? So, again, very interesting. Technical stuff isn't my strongest area, so it was useful for dipping my toe into that without it being too confusing. She was very fast at talking. I don't know if it's because she was trying to compress it into the time available, if she's a inexperienced speaker, and I know what it's like for me when I first started speaking of the nerves made time feel slow, and so you speak a lot faster than you realize you are. But it wasn't a bad talk. It's definitely just something that she could tweak upon. The third thing I did for the day was a workshop. So it was a mixture of talks and workshops for this event, and it was 2 tracks. So I had a choice each time of what I was doing. And this workshop was by Marianne Dutz. If I get your surname wrong, Marianne, apologies. I am not used to saying Dutch surnames. I will openly admit that. And she has been doing sketchnoting for a long time. So she crams an introduction to sketchnoting into 1 hour, and it was a very detailed session. She got us to do live sketchnoting with her, so she was giving examples on a screen for what she wanted all of us to do and explaining the whys behind it, which was really good. Somehow I will try and put up a copy of the sketchnote they made. I'm going to try and make it here. As well as the sketch note, I also came out again with 2 pages of supporting notes because I wanted to have some context to back up the things she was drawing or saying and why. So some of it was she was working on the sketch note and explaining things as we did it. Other things she was using a supporting giant white board to drawing board to explain things, and it was lots of little tips as well as just fundamentals. So it's things like, if something's going quite fast, you can use sticky notes as like a placeholder for something, do something rough, and then you can actually replace it with what you properly need to do. About how you can use the chance when there are the speakers, say, elaborating on a story or giving examples. That's when you can actually write down the critical details that they gave you, as well as to focus on the context versus emotion. But generally, I'm quite good with that with my note taking. I write down like the important things they say. Again, that's why I make a lot of notes. I've not done sketchnoting before, so that's why I wanted to do this one. I'm a fan of using mind maps and diagrams and things like that to support things I do, so it was relatable in that way. And it was a good session. I met Marianne at Testfest Utrecht like 2017 or so, I think. It was a while ago. And I'd seen her at Testfest Brighton a couple of years after that, I think. So I'd spoken with her before, and I saw her like when we both arrived at Leeds Atelier first thing in the morning as well. So it was nice to have like a familiar face, but feel like I could ask her things. And one thing she had, which was just nothing to do with the function of the workshop, but just something I really liked, is she had like this little bag. I don't know how well my hands are showing on the camera right now. With all her different coloured markers and things. And I just love the idea of, you do it so much, you have like a little not necessarily like a handbag or purse, but just like a shoulder bag type thing. It was only like that big, but just with coloured different markers when you're doing actual things on paper rather than digitally on a tablet. So yeah, that was a really good session. I'm very glad I attended that one. So after that talk, it was the lunch break, and whilst lunch was provided, the queue was massive. So after going inside, catching up with friends, catching up by uploading things to Twitter because I just didn't have the time during the workshop and talks, I just opted to go get my own lunch. So it was the food provided was like spicy vegan stuff, so I wasn't sure how much I might have liked it. So I just decided to go out for a walk, grab something, come back. Um, but I didn't hear anyone complaining about the food. So whilst I didn't have it, I didn't hear bad things from those who did have it, and it's quite nice to again for an event where the ticket was free and the food was free and the drinks are all free because it's all paid for by like sponsors and things like that. Fantastic. So after lunch, it was then another series of workshops, and for this one, it was one presented by Jem Hill, and they presented a workshop on shame, how we feel shame, why we feel shame, what we can do to deal with this. Because it was the first activity after my sketchnoting workshop, I decided rather than taking traditional handwritten notes, I wanted to sketchnote it, and hopefully it will be here. And it was really nice. I've known Jem for several years. They're a wonderful person. They've been in testing for ages. As well as testing, they've also been doing a lot of things to do with self care, and they even have a business called Self Care Backpack, which is what a lot of this information was supported by. And so I liked being there to support them as well. The very keen schoolboy that I was sat at the front. I was sat there with another tester I know, Beth Marshall, unrelated, just coincidental surname. And it was just nice to give them a familiar face. And whilst there was lots of people there, and this wasn't the first time doing it, I like supporting my friends, and so it was good from that perspective. It definitely gave some food for thought, like what we can do to create a safe space for ourselves and what gives you your comfort zone. And you can have a physical comfort zone as well as like an emotional, psychological comfort zone. But if you're in both, then you'll never push yourself. But you try not to be out of both because then it might be too much. So it's like if you're trying to push yourself emotionally or psychologically, then do you have a physical comfort zone? And Jem asked us all to think about what we did and gave us like printout sheets to actually write things down. I was sharing my handout with someone else, so I never actually wrote anything down, but I had conversations around it. It definitely got me thinking, like, what are there aspects of myself that I'm proud of, both in terms of things I do. Like, I'm proud of what I do as a father. I consider myself to be a really good dad. When my son comes up and tells me after we've been doing things, he's like, "Dad, you're the best." It's a wonderful feeling. Um, but there's also about things that not just about what you do, but about who you are. So things like it could be being more positive about physical aspects of yourself, for example. And there's things that I am not positive about myself because everyone is like that. But I'm trying to be better about it. I'm trying to be more open minded, more understanding, but everyone has good days and bad days. So yeah, that was Gem Hill's workshop on shame. I heard from a couple of other people who did it, and it definitely gave them some really good food for thought. Jem was really good about encouraging people to consider it a safe space if they had to leave the room because it was touching on personal things or it was just getting too much for them. They could happily go, no judgments whatsoever, which was very good. And I know Jem is a big proponent of psychological safety. The final set of talks for the room I was in was 2 lightning talks. So it was 2 small talks back to back. There was a longer talk in the other room. I opted for the lightning talk, so I thought the topics might be potentially more interesting to me. So the first was from Alyssa Burton, and it was 5 tips for more effective alerting. They admitted that they are not a tester. She was saying how, um, whilst she's not a tester, alerting can be very good for testers and just everyone overall. And I agree, because it was 5 things. And the lightning talk, it all got into one page, got some highlights, but I will give you what those 5 things are now. So number 1, include useful details. If it just says like alert and a name that doesn't mean much, what are you expecting people to do with that alert? Are they having to figure things out? Are they going to ignore it because there's just not enough information? Why is then like, have you gone too minimalist? Number 2, alert frequency. How often are you checking for errors, and how often do you want to tell people about the same error? So how much are you wanting to nag them? Alyssa then goes on to say that you will get it wrong at first, but you can adjust it. So is it something where you need to be checking it and alerting every hour, or is it like minutes, half days, days, weeks, whatever it is? Why are you doing it that often, either both looking for the issue or alerting that there is an issue? Because if you don't know why you're doing it, you've got other problems with your alert system as well. Number 3 was include guidance. Who is this alert for? Why should they care about it? What do you want them to take care of when it fires? One thing that Alyssa included was a link to supporting documentation. So it was like, this error has happened. Go here for how to fix it, how to investigate it. And it relates to those include useful details of, you're making it very easy for people to deal with the problem and figure out how to fix it. And then eventually you might not even need to do it. Like Alyssa was saying, they actually got she got the documentation down so well that they were able to solve the root cause of the problem, and it hasn't fired for ages, which is good in the sense of the problem isn't happening, but it's a shame after doing all the effort to improve the quality of the alert to then not need to trigger it. The 4th thing is make silencing easy. So again, this relates to the alert frequency of how much, how easily do you want it for people to ignore it to make it go quiet? Because if it's too easy, no one will pay attention. And if it's too difficult, people will just tune out the noise. So it's a very difficult balancing act. Is it something where you can be like, right, we know there's a problem with this, we're going to be fixing it, we need to turn off alert notifications whilst we're fixing this because we know it's a problem, stop telling us about it. And then number 5, monitor for alert fatigue. It risks not just like if you have a common alert that happens so often that people tune out, but then if a really bad thing happens and people just go, oh, there's another alert, and they're not even paying attention to what the alert's about, then it means a really bad problem is effectively there is no alert for it because it's ignored, which is very, very dangerous. So yeah, it was a lightning talk. It was very fast. It got some useful ideas. Again, I don't know how much I might use it as a tester, but it's something to consider when you're making new systems or doing any like projects and things. To be like, right, we're making this thing, cool. Have we got alerts in place for when this goes badly? No. Should we have them? And if so, what are we going to put in that alert? So it's not just, are we going to have them, but what are we including in it? Why? How can we control it? And so forth. The final talk for Leeds Atelier, but not the final activity, was from Ash Winter, and he talked about the 10 P's of testability. He joked about how he wanted to be the 10 T's of testability, but then one of the T's would be testability, and it would just be, messy because it would include itself. So it was a very fast talk. He talked about how he'd previously given it, and the slides were changing every 20 seconds. So he had a bit more time than that, but it was still a very fast thing. But it was very to the point, which worked really well. So it wasn't a lot of fluff backing up a lot of examples and stories. It was, here is a thing, what you should do about it. So I will try and give you all 10. So number 1, people. Who will be working on the system? If the devs aren't into testability, you will struggle. Number 2, philosophy. Testability is a whole team responsibility. If some people go, oh, I'm not part of that, or yeah, that's not my business, then it won't be built to be testable. The story might not be considered to be testable when the story is being created, and it will fall apart. Number 3, product. Is it testable? Is it observable? Is it telling you too much information or too little information? Similar to the alerting, will you end up with so much information that you can't do anything with it, or is there so little information that you wouldn't even know where to begin by testing it? Number 5, project. Do you have tight timescales? I imagine that every tester who has done some testing knows that unfortunately we're the ones who suffer when timelines get compromised. If the amount of time needed for dev increases, rather than ours increasing, ours actually might decrease because the endpoint isn't allowed to move. So what will that do to your testability? Are you going to end up with not enough time for it to even be tested? Number 6, problem. Understanding of customer needs and risks. I can't remember much about that one, in all honesty. That's the only note I have from it. So I'd say it is, if there is a problem, do you know what problem you're trying to solve? Because how often has a solution been made not knowing the exact problem you're trying to fix, or guessing the problem you're trying to fix, and perhaps that isn't the problem that needs to be fixed or is not being done in the right way. Number 7, pipeline. Do you have a fast, reliable feedback on changes? So have you got to wait for everything to be done for a long time and then it gets sent back to the start, or have you got small iterations that you can do? So rather than having a complete front end API, back end database, so forth, can you do small bits? Can you go, well, we can test this even bit of a web page rather than even a complete web page? There's a problem, cool, send it back. So yeah, the faster your pipeline is, the faster problems can be found and returned. Number 8, productivity. You need to be able to unearth important problems early. What is your time to testing metric? The longer it is, the worse it will get. So to me, I see this as similar to your pipeline. If it takes a long time for tests to look at some work, whether it's good old static analysis of reviewing stories or requirements, or if it's getting their hands on something that's been coded that they can get their hands on, you don't want to go, we have finished everything, here you go, good luck, and then as soon as you press the first page it crashes. You should have given us that page as soon as you had it, and we can figure out the rest, work on the rest later. Number 9, nothing like mixing up my fingers. Production issues. How many customer issues are you having? To what impact? Is it showing holes in your testing or even your testability? So if things are going wrong when it gets to customers, is it an oversight from how something was perceived, how it was worked on, from understanding the customer's needs? Yeah. And finally, number 10, proactivity. That's a mouthful. Improving test approach and learning from mistakes. So rather than being reactive, cool, things are ready, what can you do to prevent problems? So if something went badly on the last project, the last release, the last sprint, what are you going to do to prevent it going forwards? How can you learn from your lessons? So that was the final talk. But as I mentioned, it wasn't the final activity. So the last thing of the day that, again, I attended because there was two things. So they liked having, they seem to do like kind of like fun and game things to wind the day down, which I really enjoyed. So the option was like a chat GPT challenge, which I didn't go to, so I can't tell you about that. Or there is a TV show in the UK, I think it's been in the US, and I know it's definitely Australia, called The Chase, where you have four contestants answering questions against like an expert, the chaser. And so they had four members who were invited up to answer questions, and for the chaser doing the specialist knowledge and trying to defeat them was Simon Tomes, the community boss from Ministry of Testing. And it was just a nice, enjoyable experience. A couple of highlights. Well, one big highlight for me was there was a question about who worked with Lisa Crispin for agile testing book and all that kind of stuff, and the wrong answer was put on screen. And Gwen Diagram, who has a well-deserved reputation as being quite open in her language, was very explicit in pointing out that was the wrong answer, because the chaser and the audience member who was up gave the correct answer. The screen was incorrect, and we were all like, no, 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 the screen is very much wrong. And like everyone till against the person who set it up, probably just good old human error of selecting the wrong answer. And yeah, that was the final activity. After that, it was open bar for people to chat, socialise, and so forth. So I was catching up with people till about 6:30 when I had to make the train home, and it was just, yeah, again, it was great to catch up with people, some who I've not seen in a long time, just getting that good old FaceTime, as well as just people just checking how I'm doing with all the things that have been going on in my life as well. So it was a very good event. It happens 1 to 2 times a year, depending on what's been going on. Like, past few years have made it more difficult. So when the tickets are available, if you want to go, you have to jump on very, very quickly, because again, anyone who gets a chance to get to a free UK based conference that's 2 track, yeah, it's definitely one worth going. So if anyone from Leeds Atelier watches this, you all did a fantastic job, and I look forward to seeing you all again at a future event. Fingers crossed. Maybe even speaking there one day. If you've enjoyed this, let me know what it was like you liked about it. If you went to Leeds Atelier, please let me know in the comments on this video or on any social media platform that I share it. And let me know what content you would like to see going ahead. Thanks very much.